Mortal. Such a cool name for a movie. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. Brand new movie just dropped on demand. It's called Mortal. This film was out in other countries earlier this year, just dropped in the US. We're going to talk about it. Directed by Andre Overdahl. Let's get into it. So Mortal is a fantasy adventure origin story about a young man discovering he has godlike powers based on ancient Norwegian mythology. From the director of The Autopsy of Jane Doe and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark comes a very different kind of story from him. This is much more of a fantasy adventure than it is a horror film, what we're used to seeing from this director, but it does have shades of horrifying and horrific elements within it. Also, Nat Wolff, former member of the Naked Brothers band and brother of the very talented actor Alex Wolff, is our star here, and he doesn't necessarily get a chance to do anything special, but I do think he's a solid actor for sure. Nat plays the character of Eric, who is just this broken man who is unsure of where he comes from. He's unsure of why he has the abilities that he has, and as we often get in a superhero origin story of sorts, he just doesn't know how to control his powers, and because of that, he causes some damage and some havoc along the way. But then he meets this girl who is willing to essentially put her life on the line for him, and thus we have our very Norwegian mythology-heavy superhero origin story of sorts. Now, I will not say what route this goes, and I won't say kind of the revelation that we get in the third act. There were actually a couple of them. This is a film that I think had a great opportunity to establish itself as something different in a genre that we're used to kind of seeing the same old thing. You guys know me. I love a good blockbuster. I love a good superhero origin story. But I also like when we get something that's not the same formula that we see over and over. A great example is Chronicle. I thought Chronicle was outstanding because it was so different and it had that independent film feeling to it. And this movie started out with that. I think Mortal does a really good job of kind of keeping you out of the know. You're not sure why this guy is acting and feeling the way that he's feeling and acting. And we go on this slow-paced adventure of sorts, trying to understand him, and then trying to understand why those around him are so interested in capturing him. And it kind of goes as you anticipate. He's running from the bad guys. The bad guys are slowly gaining on him. Of course, he has to get a friend here and a friend there who see the good in him, and that creates our conflict that we get in the second act, in the middle of the third act, and then the finale of the third act. This movie has like 3 finales. Every time something crazy like that happened, things begin to calm down. I'm like, oh, okay, the movie's over. Wow, we're only 45 minutes in. All right, the movie's over this time. We're only an hour and 10 minutes in. And then finally the movie ends, and I don't know if it's going to end on the note that people are going to like. We often talk about movies that kind of flip the script when it comes to the ending, and for me, the ending was at least different enough to where I can say, you know what, even though the movie itself is predictable and a bit cliche-ridden, and we'll talk about it, at least they try something different at the end. But I know it's going to be a divisive ending. It's not going to make everyone happy. I was a little bit, upset, but hey, at least they went for it. But in terms of the story as a whole, it just never overcomes the fact that it's trying to be so different, but it ends up falling into the same territory that we often see with a movie like Mortal. It's very slow, and he brings on this person along for this supposedly crazy journey, and, it's a lot of walking and going from place to place and trying to accomplish a mission, and then we accomplish that mission at the end, and they throw us a curveball, which, again, I like that idea in theory. I just don't know if the movie comes together in the way that they intend. It's either supposed to be an action, adventure, fantasy-heavy superhero origin story, but you look at the tone and the pacing, and it's just way too slow for that, or it's flipping the script and bringing us something different for that, full of great mythology, but that in itself is just too predictable. Until that final moment, of course, but prior to that, I wasn't locked in the way that they wanted me to be locked in. And then when we get this awesome moment in the third act, I'm like, cool. And I've just seen it before. And then you look a little bit deeper into the special effects, and I thought the lightning special effects were terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible things that we would get from a 1980s movie. And that's fine. Again, it's a B type of movie, I guess, and they probably didn't have the biggest budget in the world. But for this idea, I was just disappointed in the way that it all comes together at the end. And I really wanted more from the story. They never dive into these side characters, and they never really give us what we needed from Nat Wolff. As an actor, I think he's solid, but he didn't really get a chance to do much with this story. So overall, I honestly feel like it could have been a bit better. It wasn't terrible by any means. I think there's some solid filmmaking here. I just think when you look at something like The Autopsy of Jane Doe, knowing exactly what it is and really delivering on that an intense story, this, it gets intense here and there, but I wasn't locked in on the characters. I think the writing was a bit poor in parts, and it just kind of follows the same formulaic path when it's a film that shouldn't have done that, when it's a film that should have set itself apart, because I love the use of Norwegian mythology here, and I really like a few revelations at the end. But as for my score, first off, if you guys like this vid and you want to see more reviews, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. I appreciate you coming in whether you agree or disagree. I'm going to go right down the middle, 50%. 5 out of 10. Mortal, I just believe there were a few too many missed opportunities that this movie just didn't capitalize on. But again, not a terrible movie by any means. I've definitely seen worse. So thank you guys for tuning in. Are you a fan of the Naked Brothers Band? Because that's where Nat Wolff is from. And which movie from Andre is your favorite? Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you soon.